Earlier today, I talked to Congressman Paul Tonko about this recent terror arrest and the suspect who actually used to live in his district. But before we touched on that, I did get his thoughts on the Supercommittee's failure to reach an agreement on a deficit reduction deal, triggering the possibility of deep automatic spending cuts. And Congressman Paul Tonko, thank you very much for your time. It's great to see you.
It's good to join you, Liz.
This is an unfortunate day, it looks like. The Supercommittee seems to me to have come to a stalemate. I don't think it's a surprise to anyone.
Well, there were many who thought that if the bigger body of Congress could not deal with the consensus, what would make us think that 12 individuals could. It's why I voted against the debt ceiling deal. It was like handing over business to a microcosm, and we really owe it to the founding parents who suggested how that framework ought to work. And until we put the interests of the general public, the greater interest of the middle class, working families, into the forefront, into the highest priority, we're not going to resolve this issue. When
you were reviewing this bill that created the Supercommittee, as you just mentioned that you voted against, did you think to yourself, this structure's never going to work, like it's doomed from the beginning?
Well, it takes, I think, a scalpel to the budget. That's what we require here, so that we cut where we can, we belt tighten, so that we invest where we must. Instead, we're going to have a budget axe. It's going to just whack away at programs in a way that's not intelligent. And what we need is an approach. We need something bold. We need something fair and balanced. And until we resolve that issue of revenues, I don't think you're going to have balance.
Before we get there, though, what would have made it better? Because at the time, the whole body was deadlocked. Mm-hmm. And you and I actually spoke, I remember, and saying, well, with your vote, you could have risked a government shutdown. Would you have preferred to see a government shutdown over? So at the time, do you think, what could have made this structure better?
I think the whole networking with the public has to be enhanced. I think that will put pressure on Congress. Once isn't it surprising that the polling across America suggests, in any poll that you look at, anywhere from 60% to 2/3 of the American public, that there ought to be balance, there ought to be revenues addressed so that the middle class isn't saturated with the payment of government. And they want investments. They want investments in jobs. They want investments in their children. They want investments in health care. So the public is saying, we want fair, we want balance, we want bold.
Well,
instead we're doing something out of whack. That's
they
not
want
balanced.
Tax the rich. That's what the public says they want.
And does that tell us what the problem is here? That we're submitting a process to the likes, the whims, the rulings of non-elected sideliners who are connected totally with large industry, with the top 1% of wealth, with the comfortable, with deep pockets. And when people are beholden to a non-elected, like Grover Norquist, who required people to take a pledge. Why? And now this pledge is held before them so that there's no move to address revenues, taxes, where perhaps there has been unfairness, obvious unfairness in tax policy, needs to be turned around and corrected.
But the base of the party likes that, right? Just like the base of your party, the real liberal activists are the same folks who are marching on the Capitol and ostensibly sleeping in Academy Park and are angry at the governor because he won't consider taxing the rich. That same active base on the other side is the Tea Party, that same active base that says, we put you in office, don't you dare raise taxes, we'd rather have you cut everything, Medicaid, Medicare, Social Security, entitlement,
But I would argue some of the polling, a lot of the polling that you see now is across the board.
Sure.
Independents, Democrats, Republicans alike, they're talking about not ending Medicare, addressing things that don't deny Medicare, make it stronger. They're talking about fairness. They want fairness in tax policy. They want balance. This isn't just Democrats out there saying that, Liz. It's Republicans and independents alike, along with the Democrats. The great majority of folks out there, and if you look at middle-class strata, overwhelming response. So why are we not? The fundamental question is, the haunting question is, why aren't we listening to the public? Washington doesn't get it. The process is broken when someone on the sidelines, like a Grover Norquist, and any of these corporate lobbyists, professional lobbyists, when those deep pockets have more say than the general public, The system is broken.
When it comes, though, down to the super committee, do you think that people like Chuck Schumer saying a number of weeks ago, this isn't going to work, almost makes it a foregone conclusion at that when there are people not necessarily on the sidelines, in the body, although not participating on the super committee, a person like Chuck Schumer, a powerful guy, third, second most powerful guy in the Senate, says...
Well, I think he might have been nudging them with his comments. I think it was the way to kind of coax a little balance in the equation by saying, well, it probably won't work if they don't do revenues, and trying to share with the public. Now, look, my conference and I personally, there were a number of us who pushed for, airing of these sessions, for the light to be shed on the process, which I think would have been very helpful. Then you would have had a public buy-in. Easily done. You should have had public meetings, 12 individuals, and the scrutiny that would have been applied by the general public viewing would have been tremendously powerful. It would have helped in the equation of success.